Here we are, episode number, I've already lost track, but we're gonna do it anyway. Right here we have John Andrew Frederick from the Black Watch. Wow, John, your catalog is insane. You're prolific. I shared your newest record with a friend of mine. They listened to it and they're like, wow, this is really cool. And then they're like, holy shit, this guy's got 20 records. Now,
2024 to be precise, Chris.
unbelievable.
Wow.
Unbelievable.
I think the first word you used, insane, I heard the other day. I ran into an old friend who used to run both a label and a club. And
Right.
she asked me, because I hadn't seen her since before the pandemic. And she asked me what I was up to. And I said, well, we released 2 records this year and about 5 or 6 in the last 4 years or something. And she goes, you're insane. That's the first thing. Which
Well,
apparently has been echoed by you.
Well, 2 full lengths, John.
People.
I mean,
Oh, yeah.
this is really quite amazing. Like before we get into that, we will get into that.
Okay,
I just like to start off like just kind of getting your backstory a bit. Like, when did all this music, writing and recording and releasing and touring, when did all that really start for you in your timeline?
When did all the madness begin? In other words, you're asking.
Well, the happy madness,
Chris. If you and my friend are correct, then you're asking a mad person to explain the madness, which is a wonderful irony. It might have started because the Beatles were my favorite band since I was 5 years old. My parents always talked about how they were driving along and on the radio when I was 5. I Want to Hold Your Hand, or She Loves You, one of those two, came on, and I just started pogoing in the back seat before the days of children, strapped in, captured by, car seats. But then when I was 11, when the White Album came out, I broke my leg playing American football so badly that it didn't heal for about a year. So I spent a year in bed, and my parents were either sadistic or perspicacious enough to say, look, kid, you're not going to become a vegetable watching telly all day. You're going to get an hour and a half, maybe 2 if we're up watching TV. So I just started reading like mad, and I'd been taking guitar from a hippie chick who in Montecito who kept teaching me, finger picking and Donovan songs, and Beatles songs would have been too complex. And so I propped my little Silvertone guitar and I started writing songs when I was 11. Not that any of those have thankfully survived. They might have been, they might have all had a major theme of being bedridden, and my resentment that me, as very much a jock, a sports person, couldn't go out and play football or basketball or baseball or what have you. So there, and then I don't know, when I finished my doctorate. And hung out at UCSB where I got my degree from for the couple of years of allotment that they let you have before they kick you out of the nest. And I started writing my first novel about a year I spent in London. And I realized, gosh, this is so difficult that I can write 3 or 4 songs in the time it takes to write 1 page of prose. I mean, it was just so arduous. I mean, I've always believed novels are like pancakes. You've got to throw the first one out to prime the griddle somehow. So I jettisoned a 500-page novel just going, this is utterly plotless. This was before I realized plots are for graveyards. You don't need a plot to write a book. You can just, if you just write beautifully. So I formed with a couple of my student friends at UCSB, just the fledgling version of the Black Watch. And I convinced one of the 3 people who joined me to wear a kilt with me on stage because the band's been named after the Scottish regiment. And the first gig we ever did was with Toad the Wet Sprocket, who went on to become, humongous, and we went on to become something else. I guess prolific, that word that I I'll countenance it, but it's also why can't you guys just say genius instead of
And John, what did you get your degree in? What?
he said ever modestly. I mean, I know that it's weird because it puts me in a spot though, Chris, because, what do I say to that? Yes, I am.
Hmm,
It's true that I put out a lot of stuff, but songs just pour out of me. And
hmm,
the Beatles catalog has so many, they've been the sword of Damocles slash rainbow above me, to mix metaphors or whatever. So there's so many
right.
songs for me to do. I mean, we just finished a
Amazing.
21 new songs.
Yeah.
Actually, that there's going to be a double record next year. I just don't. I must be insane. I
Wow.
think this is
Wow.
your podcast is my final realization that I'm
John,
out of
what did
my
you,
mind.
what was your PhD in? What did you study in?
English literature. I wrote
Okay.
I mean, that's a great way for anybody who's I don't know if you're an academic or if you went on to graduate school. It's a wonderful
Mhm.
way to kill off your interest in writing
Right.
about other people's stuff. After I finished my dissertation, I said, I vow I will never write another word about anybody else's stuff, but I'll make my own stuff, which is goes to show you that you
Yeah.
should never say never, because I ended up writing a book on the early films of Wes Anderson. So,
Wow.
again, so don't ever, we often say things like, I don't know if you concur, but we often say like, oh, I'll never do that again, or I'll never talk to
Right.
this person again, but we don't
Sure.
know what we'll do. So I've learned
Exactly.
never to say never, I think. That's
Amazing.
just one thing I've learned.
So, John, what's your process like? Like, how do you get all this stuff out? Like, how does a song come to be that
Uh,
would become a Black Watch song?
Okay. I love playing guitar ever since I took it up with the hippie chick, and I don't know, I get great pleasure out of trying to figure out different melodies and tunings.
Hmm,
Sometimes there are substances involved with with
right.
the process, which loosens one up somehow. And I have reams and reams of notebooks and notebooks, and they're just within the realms of sex and death and love and loss. There are, infinite variations on those various
For
themes, it
sure.
seems to me. And,
Yeah.
lyrics aren't poetry for me. So there's not the pressure of going, this has to be some perfect poem. It just has to fit the song. And I'm willing
Hmm.
to make a fool of myself too. I mean, I think the great film critic Pauline Kael once said, the artist's first duty is to make a fool of himself. And I believe I've done that quite admirably at this, because it
Well, do you, go
go
ahead,
ahead.
finish
Go
up.
ahead.
Yeah.
Oh, just because
Well,
it's a foolish adventure. It's a foolish venture, it seems, and it's the only thing. My bandmate Andy Creighton, who's absolutely a genius musically, way more accomplished than I am. He said music is sacred.
mm,
The other day to me, and that
mm,
really struck me. It sounds like such a saccharine thing to say, but he's right. It
right.
really is. It really is a sacred thing somehow. So
Absolutely.
a sacred thing
Absolutely.
maybe you have to do sacrilegiously in a way. Go ahead.
Well, I mean, you can't touch music, right? Once it's created, it's in the air, it's in the
Right,
ether. Like you can't get rid of it. It's out there, which is amazing. I mean, regardless of CDs or tapes or records, I mean, all these tactile things, songs live beyond those.
right.
Even if all those were to disappear today, the songs you created would still be there. Um, what what prompted you to start the Black Watch? Like, how did it all come together as a group where you guys, where it became a band?
Well, I mean, I reckon that it was just to hear a song for the first time come together with, it's always been, two guitars or guitar and violin when Jana Jacoby, who's now in Rod Stewart's band,
Mm,
who's in the band for 10 years, and a bass player and a drummer. When a song first emerges, that's a buzz better than any drug I've,
mm,
to reference drugs again or whatever, that better than
yeah,
any drug I've ever had. It's just a euphoric feeling, and there's a way in which you might even say aesthetically the song will never be maybe better somehow
mm,
than that first, as a feeling, maybe not as a recorded thing, but just that buzz that you get for the first time where everybody puts in their parts and it really feels like it's a song. That's
Mm,
unparalleled for me as a, as a venture, as a feeling, as a as a drug of sorts.
right, right.
So
And
yeah.
I mean, I guess that propels the the catalog forward in the sense that there's always these new discoveries, this new high almost that you get when songs are made. But what makes a good song? Like for you, like what songs go on to records and which ones fall to the wayside and are kind of like a stepping stone for something else?
Oh, Chris, they all go on the record.
Okay.
There aren't any songs left in a vault, hardly at all. Maybe there are two or three over the course of 30 plus years now, where we
Right.
just felt that it didn't work like that. And maybe I could be faulted for that somehow. My kid, who's often played on my records and who's my biggest booster and biggest critic as well in this sort
Mm,
of dialectical sort of way. He's often wondered to me, like, I wonder if you guys might be bigger had you put out less stuff to make it more
mm,
of a rare occurrence rather than, oh, ho hum, there's another TBW record here. And it is daunting, I think, when people go to the used bin, perhaps in particular, and see all the releases and just, go like, where do I begin? I don't want to buy the wrong one. I want to buy one that I'm going to love or whatever. And they might end up not buying anything. But I think things work out as they have done somehow.
mhm,
And so there isn't really much I can do about that.
mm,
Just in the same way that I don't know that there's anything, whether it's fate or whatever, that I could do to make the band more well known, because countless are the times that, like you referenced your friend, like wow, I can't believe I haven't heard of these guys. I can't tell you how many times I've heard that. It's
right.
on a part, and that's kind of touching. Again, dialectically, it's touching, and yet it's depressing. So there you go.
It's
But I
yeah,
mean,
yeah,
I guess I carry on and deal with it by just making more stuff.
right.
So, which
And
I don't seem to be able neurotically, I don't seem to be able to help.
have you ever had a writer's block where
Mm.
like you had a long period of time where you just didn't write? There was nothing
N-
sparking?
No, no, not at all. There's been times where we've shifted members because I've never
Sure.
fired anybody. I think there's been 20 people who's been in the band thus
Mm,
far. I've never fired anybody, but they've quit and gone on to great things or gone on to non-musical things or whatever, and
okay.
tried to stay friends with everyone as well and understanding about that. But there's been times where I spent the time where I didn't have a core of people to play with,
Mm,
then writing fiction as a way to, quell the neurosis.
right.
These are existential ventures to do these podcasts because it's dangerous to make people think about their motivations and manias and what they're.
Yes, we
Let
like
me
to
turn
dig
this
in.
around on you, sir.
Oh, I'm not the musician putting out records. You
Yeah,
are, John.
I
And
know,
to
but
great delight, to great delight. Um,
thank you.
Tell
Thank
me
you.
about like your sound over these years. How do you find that it's evolved or changed or shifted? And have band members had enough power to influence the sound of records? Like
Very,
kind
very
of
much.
just walk us through that timeline a little bit of your record catalog and maybe any shifts that have happened throughout that timeline.
Okay, that's a great question. I mean, initially I tried to mask my influences. I mean, the Beatles influence is I think it's kind of subtle because they're sort of inimitable unless you become one of these kind of skinny tie wearing, mop top sporting kind of tribute sorts of the things where you're overtly doing that. But the sort of I've been, because of my academic training, I've been very, very much aware of the fact that your duty as an artist is to incorporate your influences, which everybody has, but also to do your level best to mask them. So
Mm,
I really tried to get away. I'll even mention, like I was hugely initially influenced by The Cure, and some early, not exactly rave reviews had called us the California Cure somehow. And I'm going,
mm,
well, I guess I'd better labor a little harder to disguise my love for that band or for New Order. another one,
Mm.
an early influence. And of course, because I play guitar and because I like this, I'm not a metal guy in the slightest,
Right,
or I like
right.
lots of prog as well, but I'm not proficient enough for that. So I think it's sort of maybe organically,
Mm.
evolved. And then when Jana was in the band, she's a classical violinist, absolutely brilliant. So we featured that for a good 5 records or so. And then she said something like along the lines of, "Wow, I want the violin out by 2001 because we were kind of sick of it." And she was a very
Okay.
incredible guitar player who didn't really know what she was doing. Like a lot of great guitar players are not, musos or
Right.
maestros or anything like that. So she came up with wonderful chords for that. But then we've split up as a couple as well. And then
Mm.
she went on to, great heights with Rod Stewart or whatever. So I was back to going like, I
Right.
don't want another violinist in there. Nobody will compare to her. So it's, more guitars. And so, yes,
Okay.
absolutely. And also the last 2 records, Weird Rooms and the Morning Papers have given us the Vapors. These things were greatly shaped by producers and engineers. Where, in fact, with the Weird Rooms, I let Misha Bullock, the guy from Yorkshire who lives in Austin, and produced that record. And he's a drummer and multi-instrumentalist. I
Mm.
recorded the basic things, and then I left Austin. I said, Misha, you finish it. So it was a great leap of
Well,
faith for me, but I really
yeah.
trust him as I do Andy Creighton, who's just finished yet another new record for us. So involving
Very good.
myself with people much better at playing instruments than I am, who have great taste too, and know my taste because there's enough of it out there that they can, do a study of it. So
For
it
sure.
just seemed to have worked out.
That's really cool. That's really cool. And um, do you have specific times when you kind of stop writing music and turn to more literature, or is it kind of a
No.
mishmash of it all?
Yeah, it's a mishmash of it all. There's a thriller that I wrote. I don't really read thrillers, but I wrote a novel that's a thriller about 2 people who are greatly in love with My Bloody Valentine. Um,
Hmm.
that's where they sort of bond, but it's more of a thriller, and I haven't been able to find a publisher for that one, sadly. So I don't really have an idea for a book. I always say maybe I'll write an autobiography, but I'm not really interested in the subject somehow. So I kind of even did something even crazier. I've been writing an autobiography in verse because I've published some poems down the years. So I
Okay.
thought, gosh, a memoir, an autobiography, or whatever. Maybe this will just be a nice way for me to, start writing really long poems, and I've published a couple of those. But I don't do anything by rote. They always say that Paul Simon, apparently to this day, sits in a
Hmm.
room for an hour and forces himself to write. And I'm much more touchy-feely about that, of just going when the muse, the inspiration strikes, that's when I go for it, somehow.
Yeah.
But it really is pretty much every day that I play guitar, and maybe a melody will hit me, and I think, okay, this one's very much worth finding some words for. It always comes that way, the music first,
Okay.
and then lyrics.
Very cool. Very cool. Now, this catalog spans over 3 decades. Am I safe to say
Yes.
that?
Yeah, the first record came out in 1988.
Wow. And how has the industry, the music industry, changed over that period of time?
Gosh.
Because we have lots of new musicians that come on here, have their first record coming out, second record. We rarely have somebody that's gone through the industry for a nice period of time. In your opinion, how has it shifted or changed throughout the years to where it is now?
I'll reference one of the producers, Scott Campbell, who's been with us on and off since the early '90s. He's worked with Stevie Nicks and uh, Acetone, wonderful LA band.
Okay.
His
Beautiful band.
singer killed himself. Yeah, Richie
Yeah.
was an old friend of mine, great guy.
Oh,
And Scott's been around and he's seen it all too. And he said, in part, there aren't any real bands because everybody fancies that they're an auteur.
mm,
There are bands, but in lots of ways, that notion of 4 people contributing or 5 contributing equally to things, and I don't really pay that much, even though I'm in one of the hubs of the music
mhm.
industry in Los Angeles. I don't really pay attention to the ever shifting flavor of the month motif
Okay.
somehow. I think it was a lot easier to tour in the 90s, when we were, certainly when we were younger and didn't have as many responsibilities.
Right.
And that it's more difficult now, and it's a lot easier to tour, say, England or Europe, where we've never had a European tour, but we've had several tours of England, and we'll do another one in March actually of next year,
Awesome.
which is
Awesome.
great. But I think I don't know. There's a certain cynicism that comes from people at labels wanting to find out how many people you have on Instagram or
Hmm.
Facebook. And I already showed you my flip phone. I can barely check my email, so that's not really our strong suit, even though we have a Facebook page and an
Mhm.
Instagram thingy or whatever. So I mean that takes the focus certainly away from the quality of the music, notwithstanding the fact that there are good bands out there. There's good music out there. I'm always looking for it
Right.
myself. I'm
Right.
still a music
Right.
fan, and I still buy lots of records as well, unlike certain people like my kid who knows all these bands way before I do, but he doesn't support them by buying their stuff. So there's a different
Yeah,
generational motif, Chris,
absolutely. For sure.
that, where us old schoolish kind of people are going like, don't you want at least the cassette?
Right.
I bought a Lexus a few years ago, and it had a cassette player. I said, this is the selling point.
Nice.
All of those cassettes in my closet will live
Yeah.
again.
Oh my God, the boxes of cassettes and CDs even like
Yeah, truly. Yeah, I still
it's
have
like
all my.
everything streams now, eh? Like
Yeah,
other than LPs still seem to be something that people buy.
yeah,
Um, but the other forms, 8-track, cassette, CD just have come and gone. And over a very short period of time as well, eh? Um, John, you
absolutely.
said something too that was fascinating that I was listening to a podcast. They were talking about the death of bands. Like they're like bands don't exist much anymore. Like if you look at your top 40, your top 50, it's all individual artists, with very few bands that actually make it other than your Coldplays or your Oasis with their comeback
Oh,
every
sure.
year
Yeah,
tour.
yeah.
Um, why do you think that is? Like why is the music industry kind of shifted over to this kind of singer-songwriter, one person, one woman show, like what do you think, in your opinion, that has caused some of that change?
Well, you could put it kind of glibly as the Instagramification of music, in a way, of
Mhm,
everybody fancying in a kind of narcissistic sort of way of saying, I'm the centerpiece, I'm the cynosure, I'm the person we should
mhm.
focus on, and or not wanting somebody to spoil that vision with their own input or what have you. I don't know. I think it's a very individual case, but I don't really have a I mean, do you have a theory about why that is? Because you're not wrong at all.
No, I mean, I think it's easier as an artist to put out to record, produce. Like I've talked to a ton of musicians, and it's a one person kind of thing now. Like you could do it. It's not a problem. I can record on my computer. I can then upload it onto
Yeah,
Bandcamp. I can do a live online show if I wanted. I could go on Twitch and whatever. Like there's so many avenues I think that weren't available 5, 10
sure.
years ago.
Yeah, you could
And it's
lay that at the
created
feet of
this
technology. Yeah, too, because
yeah,
a number of my engineer and producer friends who are, more and more out of work and having to search farther afield to do live shows or to learn how to master a record or, be tour managers or whatever, realizing that bands, now that Pro Tools is just, predominant, that people can record their record, whether it sounds great or not, that's another issue, but it's
right.
made it available. That dream of, I think it was Spielberg who said, if once everybody has a camera, it'll be just like pen and paper. So I mean, and that's good, and once
Mm,
again, it's good and bad, because there's a
yeah,
glut, obviously there's a spate and a glut of stuff that's out there that's just absolute rubbish. So,
right.
but God bless everybody else for, they're certainly, have got license to try, license to ill. So there you
Absolutely.
go.
Absolutely.
There you
Well
go.
said. Well said, John.
Thank you. Thank
Now,
you.
just to kind of like bring things, we'll wrap things up. I know your time is precious. Um, Two records came out. If you had somebody ask you a question like I'm going to ask you right now, how would you answer it? What is if you had to describe them as children, as two different kind of entities, how would you classify them? How would you describe each one as their own kind of unique character?
Between the two records that came out this year.
Yeah, the
Yeah,
morning
okay.
paper has given us the vapors and weird rooms.
Okay. Weird Rooms is a very well behaved but batty sort of child, because we included all kinds of you know made up radio show things as a kind of unwitting, until we did it homage to the Who Sell Out, my favorite Who record by far.
Cool. Yeah.
And so but the morning papers is schizoid in a different way, because the songs were from a bunch of different sessions.
Okay.
And so sonically they don't adhere. And this kind of harks back to a question you asked about that what I'll just explain it, that each of our records kind of is a reaction against the one that we've just done.
Hmm.
Maybe they're not that disparate as sonically or generically,
Yeah.
but somehow every record I do, I look at the last one and go, I'm going to try in my mind, I'm going to fancy at least that I'm doing something, diametrically opposed, not diametrically opposed, but just, as a reaction against
Right.
that.
Right.
So Weird Rooms
Interesting.
certainly is it's a very tightly knit child, maybe ready to explode at any minute, or whatever, volatile. And the other one's just very sort of diffuse. It's got very pop songs. It's got very down dreamy acousticy things. It's got one serious dance thing. It's got one very New Broom Sweep Clean is a very very poppy,
Hmm.
the church like or wedding present kind of song. So I think
Yeah.
that's those two. And
Cool.
yeah, that's
Lovely.
how I could
Lovely.
best answer that.
Love it. Love
You've
it.
collected, so I've looked on your site and your Instagram. You've collected quite a few really interesting people to talk to. I mean,
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I think I'm a little bit envious of your position to get to do this, because I love to talk to people, artists about what they do, especially if they're articulate, if they don't have a clue and they're very much just, on aesthetic autopilot or whatever. But I think it's a
Yeah.
great thing. We're all in this together. We're all doing
Absolutely.
this for the love of that sacred thing that is music. So I always appreciate to
Got
talk to
it.
somebody who has good questions and trenchant questions, and can have a laugh at me too while we're doing it. So that's
Well,
great.
no laugh. I mean, I meant insane, like in the sense
Oh,
of
I know.
the quantity. Like, I don't know how all of those songs could come out of one brain. Like, it just seems, and you still have more. So, John, 2024, 2025, we're not done yet. This
Yeah,
party is just still
yeah,
partying here. What's
yeah.
what's coming down the pipe for you?
We have a double record and an EP coming next year, and as the aforementioned UK tour in March.
Mhm.
But we just finished 24 songs, not 21, but 21 are going on a new album, and there's an EP. Just
Okay.
because when I went to Austin to work with Misha Bullock again, I came back going like that captured a bunch of new things, but I'm inspired to write more. Yeah,
Hmm.
I guess it's failure that I would say is the greatest motivator. I
Hmm.
remember I told my students one time, I said, if there's a maxim I've ever come up with, it's fail beautifully. And the last day of class, one of them at the final made a bumper sticker saying fail beautifully for me. I
I
thought,
love it.
oh, of all the presents I've ever got from students, this is the most beautiful. There's just one sticker in existence. And of course I lost it. But I think failure is one of the greatest motivators. Somebody said
Yes.
recently, your failures are your triumphs, and your triumphs are your failures in many ways. And I keep on trying to make a record that's as good as the White Album, and I never will. I know I won't. But, it's just to keep
Well,
on trying to do that. Yeah.
I love to talk. I'm an educator, so I
Oh, you are.
love
Oh, cool.
your idea of failure is just a new lesson that you add to your tool chest,
Yeah,
of knowledge, that failure is necessary for learning. And if you're not failing, you're not
sure
learning.
is.
That's what I tell my
It
kids.
sure is.
And I always tell them the best word that you can always use is yet. You don't have the White Album yet, John, but
Okay. All
it's in
right.
there.
I'll take
It's in
that one
there.
on the chin.
I
So,
believe in you. I really have been enjoying your records.
Oh,
This
thank
chat
you
has
very much.
been really, really enjoyable. I think
Brilliant.
you're a wonderful person to talk to. I love your enthusiasm and your stories, and just your catalog. So, I mean,
Thank you,
thank
Chris.
you for taking some time and joining me and sharing this
Brilliant.
with the
Brilliant.
crew.
What do you teach? What do you
Awesome.
teach? What do you teach?
I help teachers teach kids.
Oh,
So
great.
I'm kind of a
Never more
coach for
necessary in
teachers.
this messed up world. Never more necessary.
Absolutely,
Truly. Yeah.
absolutely.
It's the
My
hardest
two
job.
passions.
It's the hardest job. My kid is teaches special ed in high school, and
Right.
I
Oh,
don't
it's tough.
I marvel at it. So yeah, great, good
Right
for you
on.
for doing that. That's
Thank
brilliant.
you. Thank you. Well, and thank you, John. So, people, check out Black Watch. 2 new records out. Another one coming. Tour. And we'll be watching you, John. This is you're on my radar now. I'm
Thank
never
you.
gonna leave. So I'll
Brilliant.
be waiting for the White album.
Okay, cheers. Thanks, Chris.
Thanks.
Look at the sky, the way up there, clouds don't they seem to say things to you strange as can be? Like when a child sleepwalks in dreams, look at the bad, creep-crawly things, planets, black as cake.